Today we have a great story of revenge against somebody that stole an idea. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, for every effect, there lay an inciting cause. Only the weak wait for karma, and although I learned that late, this one time it felt good repaying tit for tat. It felt good to stand up for myself in my own way. But just before you decide to spit in my face, do me the courtesy of hearing my side of the story. You should know why I did it. And if you think I should be sorry for my actions, I could take an easy guess that you're just like that lady, a vile, hypocritic creature, unworthy of being called human. You're just like my aunt. Not that I would call her my aunt to any of my friends. I wouldn't pretend to be a kick-butt student, and to be frank, there's no way anyone would actually put my name on the list of best students. From the preceding years to this moment in my life, I was the star child of my father, not my elder sister. If you'd called me a daddy's boy those years, I wouldn't bat an eyelid. Through middle school to my senior year, I'd followed the set part. Limited parties, no girls over at the house, not even the guys. Excruciating extracurriculars like being on the lacrosse team, even though I sucked, playing the cello in Harvest High Academy Orchestra, and volunteering for causes that I honestly had zero care to. The point was to be accepted to an Ivy League. But did I? Of course not. If I did, I could bet my aunt's right foot, if she's got any, that we wouldn't have had a falling out. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a bad student, just one who thinks that there's more to being a student than focusing solely on books or trying so hard to attain feats that I just couldn't see myself in academically. I mean, what about the experience, the connection? How am I supposed to live a life I would not regret if all I did through my years in college was act like the goody two-shoes everyone thought I was, never disagreeing in public spaces or venturing to deviate from the set plan that the world and my father have set in motion? But as I said, I'm not a bad student and my grades are a testament to that. What I am is a student that has over time seen the harsh reality of life, like everyone else who got a shot at making the American dream. I understand that while school was one way to greatness, it was not the way. And there's no way I would be down to put my eggs in one basket. Even as a kid scampering through the family yard for Easter eggs, I never placed them in the same place. So why would I start now? But for some reason, no one seemed to understand what I felt. At least no one that I felt really mattered to me. It started the second semester of freshman year. My first semester was a disaster. I was the exact replica of that kid that came from a fairly competitive school, thinking they were something, and as college would show them, they really weren't. Yes, think back to every chick-lit novel you've picked up. Think back to the hero of the college series you binge watch every Friday night. I was that. The only difference is that while they seemed to all find their way in the end, I couldn't. And in my struggles, I fell into the best crowd I could have ever have hoped for in college. As a kid, one thing had always interested me, even though I had no real way to pursue my interest: computers. I recall that it started a couple of years back in junior high when I saw a hacker movie with Simeon, my best friend that we would eventually grow apart in senior year. I'm blank to the context of the movie, but what stuck with me was the ease and accuracy with which the bad guy got into a server. Of course, at the time, I didn't have the faintest idea about what he was about, but I was impressed. The dark solitude of his room, the freedom of choice, and the way the colors of lines of code appeared on the dark screens in front of him. He was like this high-tech individual that had access to places he shouldn't have. The bonus of this was that he made massive money. He had the cash that would fit his lifestyle and the American dream, but he was careful about exposing that to the world. What I knew then was this: he was in love with computers, knew how to work the colorful lines, and made a massive ton of money from doing what he loved. I envied the life of this movie cast, and I envied his promptness with his keyboard. It left me wandering, and my thoughts led to me searching for answers to be like him. I knew I needed to enter the tech industry. I knew the big bags were there, and more importantly, I knew it was something I would enjoy. I thought so. My father didn't, and I never got to explore that through high school. It wasn't until my roller coaster ordeals in college that I fell into the crowd I'd always hoped to be in. Call it fate, call it destiny, I call it sheer luck. It was really all by coincidence that I would find myself in that bathroom stall that day, crying with my feet up in silence. I didn't mean to cry. For what it's worth, I didn't plan to fail another course from the preceding semester, and I was sure as heck not expecting the words my father would say to me after I informed him of my performance in the results. Were they bad? Well, if you consider a 42 bad, then you have your answer. I wasn't a bad student. I just struggled like most freshmen with the burden of academic pressure. But I was smart. You could say it was my smartness that made me piece the information being passed by the geek guys in the restroom stall that afternoon. It fueled my boldness to clean my tears and boldness to come out of the supposed empty stall to ask them what they were onto. From eavesdropping on their conversation, I figured out how much they made from tiring their butt off on a chair all day long. They were into software development, the very words that stood out in my search for the movie hero I'd envied as a kid. At that moment, I felt a change within me. I felt something die inside, and I felt the birth of a new resolve. I knew I was done trying to please my dad with my studies. If he needed the engineering degree, he could as well come get it himself. And at the same time, I knew what I wanted to be. I knew at that instant that I needed to set my teenage dreams in motion. I asked the questions, they provided the answers. In the following days and weeks, we would meet for long discussions where they explained what I needed to do. It was simple, as long as I had the seriousness and vision that they did. They would connect me if my work was good enough, and I turned out to be better than they expected. I became one of them. I was a geek, the very thing my birth father despised, and it was only a matter of time before he caught on. At this point, I'd completely forgotten the way to my lecture halls. I was immersed in a world of my own. In the world I'd created from inside my dorm room with my computer, I was engrossed with the details of being a web developer. It had a nice ring to it in my ears, and I thought that was all I needed. But I would quickly find out that I was made for more. That though the four walls of a lecture room might not have been my way in the end, the world of possibilities in my mind was just starting to flourish. So what's the deal with my aunt? What went wrong that I chose to treat her in the worst way she could have thought? In truth, no one who sees the both of us would think we were related in that way. There was the fact that she was usually overtly close to me, which made people suspect we had a thing or two going on. Then, even if I got to explain that we're related, they always instantly thought of cousins of the same age group, or step-siblings at best, but it was neither. She was my aunt in every way a dictionary would explain a female relative as your aunt. My parents are young, quite young to have a child that should be almost done with college. And if not for the plane crash that took my mom just after I turned 4, I would have believed they'd each had an optimal number of decades before they would kiss the earth's dust. Seeing as they decided to tie the knot early for whatever reason best known to them and their parents, my mom had a child 2 years just after her mom gave birth to her last child. This would mean the child my mom gave birth to would have an aunt that's 2 years older than age. Take a guess who that child is. Despite the fact that the world thought we were close, these were things about my aunt I did not know. And the fact that she was into playing around with computers was the only one that mattered to me when I found out. I would guess hiding it for a similar reason that I did, that my father was a controlling jerk who took her as his daughter rather than his sibling, for some reason had a vendetta with computers, and those that had a flair for working with computers. It would turn out that while I struggled to enter the tech world, my aunt had begun to find her way running as a game developer. But I'm smarter, I learned faster, and in no time, I got better than she was. I like to think it was because we had a bond of some sort. I like to think it was because we were closer in age. I like to think that this is what got our partnership running quickly. The deal was simple. We created a team of tech gurus on the verge of a breakout like ourselves. We ventured into creating games that brought the metaverse world to gaming. It was fun in the early days. It was all about creating something we could call ours, building on a foundation that we could go back to. We were fine with that, and we grew. The weeks quickly ran into months, and we found ourselves spending more and more time in the same room, each trying to fix a bug in the recent inclusion of a new gaming idea. We found ourselves applying to conferences about the metaverse and the insane possibilities that lay there. We applied to participate in competitions that we could leverage in the hopes of winning cash prizes that would set us up for the next idea. We had team projects, and everyone, based on their discretion, had gigs they created on the side. This is to say that it wasn't a big deal that I was working on something else, and my freaking aunt knew about it. At first, I didn't think much about it. I just believed she got interested in the things I was onto outside of our little geek club, and there was the fact that she's my aunt. But boy, did she have me fooled. It started with the extreme rush for a project we abandoned. She got a supposed deal that would fetch us handsomely if we could deliver for this client. I was never up for selling our gaming ideas, but after putting it to a vote, the team decided to sell. All hands were to be on deck. Each one of us knew our role to make the game functional, and we intensified our commitment to the dream. To do this, I had to drop my side project for a while. I needed to focus, or maybe I was just being as stupid as she thought I would be. Surprisingly, my aunt would complete her part of the project and would inform us that she had a side project she was about to pursue with another client. Of course, we were happy for her, and personally, I thought nothing strange of the actions. At least, not until I asked which of her projects it was, and she seemed evasive of my question. Yet I didn't think about betrayal. Like I said, I was good, and I was the second best in my team, if not the best. So I completed my section of our joint gig and tried to go back into my side project I had ongoing before the rush hour on the main gig. It was at this point I realized that something was wrong. Something didn't feel right when I began the software. It felt strange for reasons I did not know at that time. And as I continued to figure out why bugs were on a rampage at my work, I got a call from my father that he was around and needed to see me. Of course, I immediately knew something was wrong. My father had never been to my school. As a freshman, he didn't even accompany me because I was man enough to check myself in school. My father was furious when he saw me. He asked when I dropped out of school, why I decided to bring shame to his name. I wondered how he knew all of this, but the answer became obvious when he asked me why I decided to throw my future away for a life behind keys that would birth no rewards and leave me leeching off him in my 40s. Just one family member knew what I was into, my aunt. But why would she do this? What was the reason? We had a good thing going, so I struggled to understand why she would decide to stab me this hard at this time. Before he left, he swore to wash his hands off me if I didn't return home with him immediately. But I knew I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I'd figured out why my aunt did it and what she stood to gain. I was furious and I went to her apartment. I had the keys so it was easy to get in. Then I saw the logs, the notes, and the opened calendar. I knew where she would be. I knew what she was up to. She had stolen my work to pass it off as hers. She had planted the bugs into my code and thought I would be long gone when she made the presentation to her new client. I was enraged, not because she stole my idea, but because she snitched on me. She went too far, and if she was willing to do that, what do I have to wait for karma? Karma is for the weak. I'm not weak. She might have been smart to try to rip me off my sweat and stress, but she wasn't that smart. I have hidden signature codes on all of my work. No one knew about this. I knew for certain that she couldn't have figured out what my hidden message was in my code, so I matched to her location. She was at a cafe 15 minutes away, and all I needed was one taxi, and I took it. I barged in right before the deal was made. I rushed my speech, stating that the property was mine, not hers. Of course, she tried to deny it, and I proceeded to ask the client to check through for my code. He found it. He stood up in anger, pissed that she tried to prey on his kindness, and vowed to stand against wherever her name popped up. Before he left, he gave me his card, but I knew it was never going to come in handy. At least, not till a couple of years have passed. Sometimes it really is who you thought to be your own people doing it to you, huh? Honestly, I think that's a common story that comes up, especially in the tech industry as far as startups go. I mean, just look at the story behind Facebook. There's plenty of stuff that went on there that you could very easily consider backstabbing, cutthroat stuff. That said, our next story is, which coworker stole my idea? So I snitched her to her husband. Corporate workplaces are very brutal, and for me, it's even worse. I'm not a morning person, and I hate going out. Upon that, my commute to work is very stressful, and once I get to work, it doesn't get better from there. My boss is always hard on us to deliver, but instead of all my coworkers being frustrated and annoyed by it, they somehow draw motivation from his constant bickering. He hired a team of equally goal-oriented, driven people, and I was nothing like them. My name is Joan, and I work as a brand strategist. We try all that we know and can do to help brands to increase their number of followers on social media, subscribers on YouTube, fans for celebrities, buyers for production companies, and lots more. Sometimes these things don't just come easy to us, but there's always a way around it. My boss, Mr. Bricks, used to give us a week or the weekend to come up with a mind-blowing idea or strategy that would completely change the game and catch our competitors totally off guard. Truthfully, I had never come up with the winning idea. It was always one senior strategist to one junior marketer. It was never just me. That was why when Louisa, a coworker, stole my idea without giving me credit, I totally flipped. I could have gotten the accolades she received and I could have participated in the bonuses, but Louisa was too selfish to consider anyone but herself. By the way, Louisa should have thought twice before stealing my idea because what I knew about her was my weapon against her. Work besties turned to sworn enemies. Well, I wasn't even bothered that I lost her as a friend. I hated the job anyway and I planned to leave. Our boss called us into his office one day. Me, Louisa, and two other boys that Louisa and I also hated. We didn't exactly hate them, we were just always placed to compete against each other, and they were often ahead. They'd gotten the last two winning ideas. They were young like us, but smarter and much more interested in marketing. Louisa and I were not partners, but if we wanted to get ahead in the whole corporate ladder things, we had to work as a team just like Jasher and Billy, the two boys did. So we had to have each other's back. I admit that every time Louisa came up with a great idea, we shared the accolades. She attributed the work to both of us. That was our truce. If one person makes the boss proud, we say we did it together, and so that we will never be apart from each other. We get promoted together, get the same increase in salary and equal bonuses, and rise above the best buds together if we were ever going to do it. 2 is always greater than 1. On more than one occasion, when Louisa came up with something nice, we presented it together and we implemented it together also. Mr. Bricks often left the ideator to execute his plans. If he needed any other member of staff, he could request from the boss to let them work together. I've worked with all the members of staff on my level. That's Louisa, Jasher, and Billy, though I never thought up the ideas myself. That's what still kept me on the job though. If Mr. Bricks found out that I wasn't as effective in the ideation process as I was in the executorial process, he would have separated me from Louisa and limited me to a one-sector staff member. I didn't deserve it, but I maintained the double-sector staff member status. I just thought if Louisa was at any point uncomfortable with it, she should have simply told me rather than taking away my glory the one time I actually deserved it. So when Mr. Bricks had finished telling us what our next task was, I was simply stunned because for the first time, I knew what to do. Jasher and Billy immediately got up with their notebooks. They started making headway. We greeted each other at the close of work, and they bet with us that time again, they were going to win the boss's heart. If they weren't so cute, I could have actually have smacked their heads, but that was just them being boys. I turned to Louisa and told her to get into my car. I had just the perfect plan. No need to tell that here anyway. We went to fix appointments with some influencer and high-end professionals in sports for the particular gig we were working on, which was to promote a morning supplement. Thanks to my mother, I knew some retired sports persons in the field. They could fix me up with one of their other well-known colleagues, both out and in the business. When we talked to them about it, they were willing to work with us because it was also going to boost their image, get them on signposts, packaging, on TV ads, and lots more. It took us a week to conclude with all of our planned signers. Some of them we got to talk to them personally, but others we wrote to their managers who gave us some positive feedback. Luckily for Louisa and I, we had 2 weeks to conclude our plans. And in less than 1 week, we were done with finalizing even the littlest detail. I overheard the boys one time during lunch talking about YouTube ads. After weighing their chances against ours, I figured that we were at much better odds than they were. Everyone knew that YouTube ads were a menace. They got skipped over and over and caught the attention of 1% of video streamers. Nobody would pay attention to a video that popped up when they're urgently searching YouTube for an educational video, a cooking video, or maybe a music video. Those things kill the mood. So I was sure that except Mr. Bricks was unwilling to spend a lot of money on this meal supplement brand ad idea, he was going to have to go with Louisa and my plans. The day came for us to present the ideas we had, but because I did all the effort to write appointment letters and took time to meet with the celebrities myself, I left the entire presentation planning to Louisa, not knowing that she had harbored resentment against me because she thought that she could have been receiving far more accolades than she'd been getting because she had to share the attention with me every time. So Louisa got up after Jasher and Billy were done. I remained seated, eager to watch what she had put together of the work we did. We planned a presentation together, if you ask me. I knew what I did, so I gave her the information, and I told her the expected outcome. She was supposed to put it all together and present a compelling result. Her presentation was nothing further from what I expected. Apart from omitting the part where I was the one who had the idea, she lied that she spoke to the celebrities, she had their contact, she had their details, and she knew them personally. It was all a lie. Then she proceeded to state that once she finalized with them, she drew out the entire presentation herself. When she was done, there was a round of applause coming from the three men. I refused to clap. Then suddenly all eyes were on me. I was shocked at first. I didn't know it was such an offense not to clap until Mr. Bricks sarcastically asked if I was going to stand and give my own presentation or I was expecting them to read my mind. I saw Louisa put her hands on her hips for my peripheral view. She knew what was coming. The whole idea Louisa presented was mine. We did it together and she presented it, I said. That is not what I remember, Louisa said. I narrowed my eyes at her in disbelief. So you mean to steal all the spotlight to yourself? I got up, saying in a not-so-suitable voice for a business meeting, who took you to meet my mom and got us in talks with the retired tennis player? Who spoke to omitted name for both of us? Who got all those contacts? And most of all, whose idea was this anyway? She said, please, this is the first contribution you've made since you joined. I make all the moves and all you do is just participate in the final stage and have me share the stage with you. I said, if you were so bitter, why didn't you tell me? I could as well create my own slides for the idea I came up with. And what about the other times, she barked, when I single-handedly managed the projects? I could have had far, far more bonuses. I said, oh, you're just bitter. Our boss stopped us right there. Once he heard that most of the work had been done by Louisa alone in the past, he wanted me to confirm that it was true. I owned up to not being the most creative and innovative person in the group, but the present idea was mine. He heard me quite well and dismissed the meeting. Later, he called to tell me that he could not continue to pay me for 2 sectors of his company. I was only working in 1 sector. I was in complete agreement with that, only if he would award me for my rightful position as the originator of the newest idea. He said he would ask Louisa again after telling her that I'll be dropped to only executionary positions alone. Then she would be honest who owned the latest idea. And since it was going to be fun to execute that with all the sports celebs we'd spoken to, he was going to allow us all to partake in that, including Jasher and Billy. After I heard that, I got very furious with Louisa. We had long coalesced to form a strong female bond instead of going at the men alone, and now she betrayed our bond by outing everything we'd done together. I wasn't going to take it easy on her. Since she had broken the women in business code by letting sister down because her pride wouldn't let her rise alongside another woman, I was going to break the cis code, which was keeping her dirty little office affair private. Yep, Louisa had 2 men, her husband and her secret office lover, Craig, in the office. When we're done with work, she would go out for a drink with him and come back the next day to narrate how loving and caring Craig was. At first, it was just the lunch he paid for, the flowers she had on her desk, the frequent leaving their offices to check on each other. Then it spiked to them sleeping in the same room during our business travels. Craig had his own room to himself, while Louisa and I shared a room that she only slept in once on the entire trip. They had managed to keep their office affair from the other workers, but Louisa considered me her work bestie. When one truce was broken, then the other truces had to come crumbling down. I was determined to take my own pound of flesh from her since she humiliated me. I thought about telling her husband Josh, but that would be my word against hers, and I may not have been able to pin her that way. So I wanted to take proof to Josh when I went to meet him. I could have told him ahead and then wait for Louisa and Craig being together, and then I could take him there to busy her, but I could not predict what his reaction would be. I didn't need him to spoil the plan, so I wanted to do it on my own. It was going to be different because I was no longer in the same office with Louisa, but I knew where they always met, and I knew Craig's house because I'd picked her up drunk before. I dropped her off at home and told Josh that we went on a girls' night out together. This time, I hired a professional photographer. In actuality, I didn't hire him. He owed me the work for free. He got pictures of them together in the restaurant and pictures of her entering his car after their dinner date. Then he drove her off to a hotel. I asked for the printed pictures to have the date and time they were taken on it so that Josh could confirm what lie Louisa had told him she was doing. Funnily enough, when I went to Josh with these evidences, he wasn't surprised at all. Apparently, the signs were showing that her mind was with someone else. He almost teared up and things were getting too emotional. I was thankful that I went there with a photographer. If not, it could have felt so awkward patting a grown man. If Louisa walked in on us at that moment, it would be me that would have some explaining to do, but luckily things went well after that. Josh was a good man. He didn't want to embarrass her. He only told me that he would take it from there. Apparently, he simply asked for a divorce, and Louisa was shocked. He revealed the pictures but didn't disclose who had taken them or who put the person up to it. My identity was hidden throughout the entire case. As for me, I simply tendered my resignation letter because after working in a lower position under Louisa, I could not bear seeing her so miserable every single day throughout the divorce. She had kids, but because of the many nights when she came back drunk, Josh gained full custody of their children. Craig, on the other hand, didn't even as much as Josh did. What did she even see in him? Funniness? Well, he was also not looking for anything serious. He just liked to play around, hook up. He loved her body, he loved her brains, and it suited him for the time being, but he didn't want a broken woman whose heart was torn into pieces. Before I packed my stuff and left, I offered my condolences to Louisa because I heard she was getting a divorce. I wished her well and gave her my new business card just in case she wanted to reach me sometime. We could sit together and talk about the matter. So what do you guys think the percentage chance is that Louisa took that new business card and ripped it up when OP wasn't looking? I'm willing to bet after their life crumbled, the last thing Louisa wanted to do was reach out and have a dinner with OP. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.